Well, in the Philippines, believe it or not, there's no shortage of great ideas that make a great application. In fact, experts believe the local software economy of the Philippines has the potential to reach $6 billion in 2020. With more accessible development tools and cheaper infrastructure, the only thing left to do is to get the developers to start up and to start running. And to talk to us about this, we're joined here in the studio by Alvin Gendrano. He's the Director of Development and Platform in Microsoft. Alvin, thanks very much for coming to the show.
Oh, thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me.
And
really glad to be here.
Congratulations to your alma mater, and that's why I put you again in a green chair, because you just squeaked past
That's right.
FEU.
Go Lasa.
All right, that's to put you in a good mood then.
That's right. That's right.
Alvin, you've been working for Microsoft for how many years now?
So I've been working for Microsoft. This is my 15th year in the company. I started in 1998.
Okay, so you're retirable.
Yeah, maybe.
You actually, no, you're far from retired because you've still got a lot more on your plate and you've got a lot more stuff to do for the Philippines. So what were you exposed to in Microsoft?
Yeah, so one of the great things, at least working for a big company like Microsoft, is really just the scope of what that company is. I started off being a technical lead in the developer group at Microsoft. So focused on databases, clustering, high technologies, like replication, things like that. And I used to work with big software vendors in the States. Right, and I used to actually advise CTOs at the time how to make full use of Microsoft technology. So that was one of the things I did early on. And then later on, I said, why not get an MBA? So I came into Microsoft with a master's in computer science, and that's how they found me. But afterwards, I said, why not get an MBA? And I got an MBA, and I said, how can I apply my MBA skills? So then I moved on to a different role, which actually had me doing the creation of global services sites around the world, to the extent that we were providing developer services from sites like India, from Shanghai.
So you're more into enterprise solutions, really?
Yeah, initially.
Initially.
Right, yeah, when I started. And then later on, and then again to focus on the scope of what Microsoft is as a company, I then said, what if I tried to do something within Microsoft that I really love to do?
Which is?
Yeah, which is gaming in this case. So when I was young, me and my brothers, so they're both in the States now, but of course we grew up here in the Philippines. And during those times, growing up, Nintendo was a big thing. Right? The family computer.
Famicom,
right? We spent a lot of time, a lot of money on Famicom during those days. That's right. And it was a lot of fun. And quite frankly, to an extent, we thought that we were going to create our own game company at some point. And of course, we never got to do that.
But you work for a company that actually makes games.
That's right. Yeah, but it turned out that Microsoft, around 2001, started creating its own game console called the first Xbox.
The first Xbox,
Right, and in 2007, I said, why not take a leap of faith? A guy that doesn't have games industry experience, right? Just really taking a leap of faith. Somebody that was passionate about games, knew about all the games that were popular then, and I just said, why not? I applied. Right, I recently I got my MBA. Let's try to see what I can do within the Xbox team. Right, so I went there. I found an interesting job. It was called the group manager for the Xbox Live Marketplace team. Right, and it was a small business, really, within Microsoft, even in the Xbox.
Small at that time because online gaming, at least for the console, hadn't picked up yet.
Absolutely. So during the time, about 2006, 2007, the Xbox Live Marketplace was about a $20–30 million business. It was small, it was growing a little, and I said, might be something interesting, right? Around the time, the iTunes market was beginning to come up as well. But then again, these were at the time unproven models. The business models were not defined. There's a popular concept called the 70-30 split, right, which defines how much of a percentage the publisher gets of the game, and the developer, and the platform holder. Right, and during those times, that was just an experiment. It was like a line in the sand. What if we did 70-30? Right, and it just so happened that it stuck. And now, 5, 6, 7 years later, that's the norm du jour.
It's like the de facto model for most online applications.
That's right. So during those times, we started the Xbox Live Marketplace business, and or actually, I got in after it started, and it was a $20–30 million business at the time, and it was a lot of fun. Right, I got to work with the top publishers in the U.S., like the likes of Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, folks from Japan like Konami, Sega, so on and so forth. I used to go to all the conferences.
Were you the only Filipino in the group?
There were a couple of us. So it's a group of about 400, 500 people. And there was another Filipino that was doing advertising at the time.
Okay. But your role really was to develop the software.
No. So my role was more on the business side of
The
the
distribution.
Xbox Live Marketplace. So I owned the store. So I owned the profit of the store, right, and the operation costs of the store as well. So it was up to me to find the stuff to put in the store, right, and then to merchandise the items in the store so they're purchased. Right? And the great thing about it was that we were able to grow that business from a $30 million business when I started to a $300 million business after I left 2 years later.
And you also increased the number of people with eye bags who can't stop playing online.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah, so if you've ever used, let's say, Call of Duty and downloaded the map pack, you contributed to my marketplace.
Not exactly. Now, you stayed in that division for how long?
So I stayed there about
Xbox
3
Online.
years.
3 years.
And aside from the Xbox Live Marketplace growing that, we also delved into other things. One of the interesting things we ended up creating was what we call the Avatar Marketplace, which allowed you to dress up your avatars, right, with gadgets, with different accessories like hats, so on and so forth. And the great thing about it was that this is how I got exposed to fashion to an extent.
Really?
Yeah, because we ended up meeting with fashion labels, right? Because the fashion labels...
you had to do that.
Yeah,
just to dress
absolutely.
up the avatars.
Absolutely, because
Amazing.
brands like Adidas, like Nike, for instance, Reebok, and some of the high fashion brands would say, wouldn't it be nice, for instance, to have the avatars, the virtual representations of people, be dressed up in high fashion or in sports
I actually
clothes?
have to confess, Alvin, I'm not an online gamer, but what you're describing to me is absolutely amazing in the way that you're mixing real-life merchandisers with a virtual world. Yeah. But so you moved on from the Xbox Market Live. And what? Went back to the Philippines? Was that the transition?
Yeah, so I did one other step before going back to the Philippines. So quite frankly, I was a little bit afraid, at least initially, that just my skills in Xbox, for instance, might not have been directly translatable to the market here in the Philippines. So I made the jump to what we call the SQL Server database business.
So you went back to what you originally were doing?
That's right. Yeah, but in a different role. So I was the director of business management for a $4 billion product.
Ooh, okay. And what made you decide to go back to the Philippines?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to come back. Right? The interesting thing is when after I graduated from school, from college here in the Philippines, I graduated at LaSalle, in case it wasn't obvious from my comment earlier. Yeah, so I said I wanted to get a degree outside the country from the best universities in the world, and at the time the US had great programs in computer science, and that's why I left. But to an extent I left really with a grudging heart, because I knew about the brain drain issue even as I was leaving the country, right? And I told myself that I was going to come back, right? And the reality of leaving was more to explore the world, gain necessary skills, learn, and hopefully come back to share those learnings. And the interesting thing is, when I was trying to explain this to my relatives in the States, right, who had lived there for 30 years and had stayed, a lot of them said, "Oh, that's just a passing fancy."
To come back to the Philippines?
Yeah, to come back to the Philippines. That in a few years, you'll forget all about the Philippines. You'll never come back. Yeah, and I kept telling them, no, you're wrong. I will come back. I will come back. The interesting thing, though, was that I said, let me give a target of 10 years to come back. And I left around 96. Right. And of course, I didn't come back in 2006. I mean, I came back in 2011-ish. Right. Which means that really I was delayed by about 5 years.
Now, do you actually see that decision at least bearing fruit? Your idea is that you want to share whatever skills, whatever knowledge you picked up from your years in the U.S., and what we're looking at now is a software market that needs to mature more.
Right.
What can you do for the software market now, given what you picked up in the States?
Yeah, so the great thing, again, being part of Microsoft, is that it turned out, as I was investigating the different things I could do to give back to the country, that there was a role in Microsoft Philippines, leading the developer and platform group here. And it just so happens that the core group, the core mission of the Microsoft Developer Platform Group here in the Philippines is to help grow the local software economy.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And not just from the perspective of consumption of software,
Yeah.
but also the
creation.
development and creation of software, which is really my passion. Right? And the interesting thing about that, when I look back and think about what more we can contribute and do going forward,
Yeah.
we're really at this time where with the advent of the internet, of cloud computing, devices, app stores, virtual goods, right? We now have a market for software technology products and content potentially created here in the Philippines that can be sold and exported to any other corner of the world, which is a great export market for us to tap.
Now, is Microsoft somehow providing the initial idea, say, or the initial direction? Say, this is the kind of software or the purpose of the software that we want to achieve, and then look for somebody with the skills to develop it.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. So we have programs, for instance, the Business Park program that provides startups with software, with services, and cloud computing infrastructure.
So you're
that
equipping
they can
the business.
Yeah, so we're equipping startups, for instance. The ideas tend to come from them, right? But then again, we get them in touch with other members of the community that might be able to refine their ideas. And we do this in terms of partnering with the community, but also partnering with organizations like the Field Dev Foundation and Developer Connect. And one of the events, for instance, that we're going to do in the next few weeks is the Hack to Hatch event, which will be in Cebu on October 5, 6, and 7.
We did mention that on previous episodes of Future Perfect with some of our other guests. So very quickly, the idea, of course, of developing local software, the local software industry, what areas or what categories of software should we be focusing on? I mean, your background, of course, in gaming, but you are also in enterprise solutions.
That's
what
right.
should we be developing?
Yeah, I think going back to the initial part of the segment, where we think that really there's this opportunity for the software industry here in the Philippines to be a $6 billion industry. Right? For us to get there, we need to have software. We need to have creations in each of those major areas. Of course, gaming is big, just mainly from a consumerization point of view. Consumers love games. It's the biggest selling category in any marketplace, in any app store. Right? So definitely we need something there. But at the same time, computing in business is also changing to an extent because of all these consumer technologies that's beginning to surface. So just imagine the emergence of touch. Right? And maybe make a parallel or corollary to how the mouse got started a couple of decades ago.
Should developers now be focusing more on the Microsoft 8 platform?